Looks like we're good. Go ahead.
Awesome. Okay, welcome everyone. Today is Thursday, September 17th. It is 10:02 a.m. and we're all here today for our regularly scheduled Las Cruces Economic Recovery Board ad hoc meeting. So I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. With that being said, is there any conflict of interest from any of our board members today? Please do raise your hand in the chat and we will call on you and go over that at this point in time. Okay, as I'm seeing no conflict of interest and no hands going up, we're going to go ahead and go on to the acceptance of the agenda. And just so you all know, we do have quorum right now, so we are good to go on that. So acceptance of the agenda, if there's any discussion or questions at this time. As I'm seeing no questions on the agenda as presented, if I can get a motion to approve the agenda as presented to us today.
This is Michael Harris. I'll motion to accept the agenda.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr.
Actually,
Harris.
I'm sorry, I have a question. I thought I heard that maybe the public transportation was not going to be something we could discuss today?
That is correct. I mean, we can definitely discuss it. It's just that we do not have our presenters on this call today, so we will not be able to get the factual information. So we have a choice that we can either amend the agenda to table that item until they can join us at a different date, or we can talk about it during the discussion and move to table it during the discussion item itself. So we have those two options. If you want to talk about it, we can talk about it. If you don't want to talk about it all and wait, you guys can amend. Yes, Griselda.
Yes, Mr. Chair, and we reached out to our staff members and the expert on this topic, and they will be available to join us next Thursday. So if the desire of the committee is to table it for discussion until next Thursday, they will be available for their input at that point.
Perfect. Okay. So it looks like they will be able to join us next Thursday. So we can either, what I would suggest is that we move to accept the agenda and then we table it till next Thursday during the discussion item. Ms. Montgomery, you have your hand raised?
I was going to motion to, or I was actually going to second Michael Harris's motion to accept the agenda, but I guess we can table that for next Thursday, the transportation. So amend the motion by adding that we table the transportation to next Thursday.
Okay, so right now, Mr. Harris, did you make a motion? Did you complete your motion or not?
I can complete my motion to accept the agenda, and then we can discuss whether we want to table that later, as you suggested. I think that's a fine suggestion.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table. Ms. Montgomery, did you second, or can you re-second, please?
I re-second Michael Harris's motion.
Thank you. Okay, any discussion on the motion to accept the agenda as is? Please use your hand raise function if you do, and we'll call on you and go from there. As I am seeing none, can I please get a roll call vote on the acceptance of the agenda as presented today?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Ms. Demi Moore? Absent. Mr. George Miller?
Yes.
Ms. Sharon Thomas?
Yeah. All right. Yes.
Ms. Veronica Archuleta?
Yes.
Ms. Ron Fitzherbert?
Yes.
Mr. Doug Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Susan Greenwald,
Yes.
Ms. Jolene Martinez, Ms. Jolene Martinez, absent. Ms. Darlene Lopez,
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
motion passes.
Okay. We have accepted the agenda as is, and we'll work on the transportation issue later on during the meeting. With that, we did next on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from our September 10th meeting. Those were emailed out to you all. If there's any questions, concerns, or comments on those minutes, we can hear those now. If not, we need a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
This is Michael Harris. I'll motion to accept the minutes.
Perfect. We have a motion on the floor to accept the minutes as is. Do we have a second?
George Miller, second.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. We have a motion and a second on the floor for Mr. Miller to accept the minutes as is. Any discussion on those minutes? As I am seeing none, can I please get a roll call vote on the acceptance of the minutes from the September 10th meeting?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Ms. Debbie Moore, absent. Ms. Sherry Thomas,
Yes.
Ms. Brooke Montgomery,
Yes.
Ms. Veronica Archuleta,
Yes.
Mr. Ron Fitzherbert,
Yes.
Mr. Doug Cohen,
Abstain.
Ms. Susan Greenwald,
Yes.
Ms. Jolene Martinez, Ms. Jolene Martinez, absent. Ms. Darlene Lopez,
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
motion passes.
Wonderful. Motion passes. Mr. Fitzherbert, let me say I loved your Las Cruces Safe Promise background on your screen. That was pretty cool. Thank you. Like that. Okay, so we accepted the minutes from the September 10th meeting, and moving on to our discussion. We got that done in 10 minutes. Congratulations. That's great. Okay, so we are going to be discussing the City of Las Cruces business registration fee schedule. We have Mr. Timothy Pitts on with us that can answer any questions that we have. I know that we got the link to that fee schedule during the last meeting. I hope that you all had a good chance to look over those and to see if anything makes sense to you. I know that we kind of talked about waiving the business registration fee, or maybe we can do a reduced business registration fee. But I want to hear from the board as what you think a good and equitable process is on the business registration and fees. So if you guys want to raise your hand, we will call on you and go through those. And then we have Griselda who can answer some questions, as well as Mr. Pitts, and we can go forth and figure this out. Mr. Harris.
Yeah, I apologize. My internet connection is not working well enough for video at the moment. But I have a procedural concern, I guess, about whatever. So were we to suggest waiving a fee or reducing a fee, all of the businesses in town kind of like, it's not like all of these registrations are due on January 1st. And so everyone's fees are due at various points throughout the year. And so it seems like there would be a lot of overhead and perhaps confusion about, let's say that hypothetically we suggested that the business registration fee of $35 was waived. Well, actually, that one probably can't be. I think we heard the state law, but your fee is waived for the next year. But let's say that council decides that, but then somebody had just registered their business and just paid 35 bucks. So, is that for the next 6 months? Is that for the next calendar year? Is that for the business's next renewal cycle? And then, that's an extra, if it's seems like the business's next renewal cycle is reasonable, but then, the city staff would have to track that. And also the business themselves would have to track that and remember that, hey, next year, in 360 days, I have to get 35 bucks off. Anyway, with my personal experience with the business registration renewal system, the having to track an extra thing, I guess, and that overhead would be a concern to me. So I'd be interested to hear staff's thoughts on that, but it seems like a lot of overhead. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Ms. Martinez, you do have your hand raised. I'm thinking that you're going to answer that question, and then we'll go to Ms. Montgomery.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Harris, thank you for that question. So based on the discussion that we had with our legal team, the recommendation was tied to what you mentioned about the overhead, that the fee was not eliminated, but reduced to have a small fee, let's say from $35 to $5. So that would cover some of that overhead that you mentioned. On the administrative side, what we could do is have, because these fees are tied to an ordinance, we will have to adjust that ordinance, going back to council for and include a sunset clause to it. And to make sure that it's an equitable approach, the recommendation would be to do a full 365 days in which all of the businesses would have the opportunity to not to have the adjusted fee. So whenever the business registration or the business renewal is scheduled for the individual businesses during those 365 days, they would be eligible for it. And so if we do starting, let's say January 1st of 2021, for that to go all the way to December 31st of 2021 and cover that full year, but also to make it less of a burden to staff processing and make sure that during that period is the period of the different fee or the waive fee to minimize some of those tracking concerns you mentioned. Dr. Peets, do you have additional thoughts on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think it would not be, if we do it in a consistent manner, we do it with a date and a sunset clause and so on, it would not be a problem if we wanted to say for the year of 2020, and we would go back to January and issue refunds for the past 8 months of business registrations, or if we did it from October 1st to October 1st of next year, and we just didn't charge it, we could, as long as it's consistent like that, it is not a difficult thing for us to manage. If it's going to be something where it is specific to specific types of businesses, that becomes a very difficult, because I can just change the fee schedule in the software and say, this is what you charge. And then it's consistent. It's when it's inconsistent that Mr. Harris's concern becomes a big concern for me, because now my staff need to evaluate, keep track of things, put records in, and so on. So I would prefer, just from an administrative perspective, a very consistent, straightforward, from this date to this date, we are not charging these fees, or we're charging less, or whatever it is that you feel is the appropriate decision. It's a relatively easy process for us because it just means we charge a different amount for that time period.
Awesome, thank you. So I think those two questions have been answered. Ms. Montgomery, you do still have your hand raised. If you want to go ahead.
Brooke Montgomery, for the record, my internet is shaky, so I heard most of what everybody said. I had a question, I think probably both. I just want to clarify last week's numbers. Believe it was approximately $186 or $187,000 that the city receives for the registration, various fees, and that's the number that I had last week. Is that correct? And then, well, I'll say my math, and then you can correct me if I'm wrong. About half of that went to business registration, not like alcohol, liquor licenses and other fees. And then I looked up online, and it looks like a quarter are home businesses. So I divided 186 by half and got 93,000. And then I divided by 4 to get a quarter, and I got 23,250. This is approximation of revenue to the city for home business registrations. And I just wanted to clarify that information. I think it would help us to know if it is 23,000 that we're potentially lowering. Everybody has that answer.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I'll say I think your numbers sound about right to me, and I have not gone through and done a full audit of where all of those goes, but that's about right. Generally speaking, although I would say that home businesses are probably closer to 50 to 60% of the registrations we have. So I would say you would probably be talking about somewhere on the order of $90,000 to $100,000 if you applied it to every business. If you applied it only to home-based businesses, then it would be about 60% of that. So let's say $55,000, $60,000, something like that. And those are estimates. I can always give you more realistic numbers if you want to. I can do an audit on everything we charge and find that out.
Okay, perfect. Ms. Martinez, go ahead, ma'am.
Mr. Chair, one item that it was discussed during last meeting, and I believe Madam Vice Chair brought it up for the discussion, and it is something that we internally have to make sure that we ensure is equitable treatment for all businesses. So the one item that covers all businesses is the business registration. I believe if Dr. Pitts can confirm this, but the rest of the fees are sector specific. And if we waive those by sector, then it would not be open to all businesses, and therefore equitable treatment from our perspective would be an issue.
So with that being said, when we were going through those fees, and I went through them the other day as well, there's a lot of fees that are sector specific. So to operate a Christmas tree lot, it was $50 per 60 days or 90 days. So my question is everyone pays a business registration fee. They get their business license once per year, they have to renew, and then they have other fees associated, or is a food truck fee different than a business fee? If you can just kind of explain that for me. I think I already know everyone needs a business license, and then there's other fees under that. If you can just let us know for sure, that way we can make an informed decision on what we want to exactly go forth and do with this committee. Go ahead, Mr. Pitts. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Um, like if you're a food truck, no, you only pay the food truck fee unless you also have a place of business. So the business registration fee is per location. So if you're a place with 7 locations, you have 7 business registrations because it's tied to your location. Business food trucks do not have a location, and so they're a separate entity.
Okay.
So yeah, there's some of these that are different. The Christmas trees per event is and that's a recovery for inspections that we do. The fire department goes out and inspects when they set up and make sure they're not doing something unsafe, and so on. And the same is true of some of the the carnival, circus, or menage. I like some of our terms. They seem a little dated to me, but I don't know when the last time someone ran a menagerie in Las Cruces. But I just looking down the list, yeah, they each have their own character and do not necessarily. In some cases, if it's a tent sale and you're doing it out in your parking lot, that is you would have your business registration of the business, and then you'd also be paying for the tent sale. And again, depending on how that worked. So it may not be completely the case that everybody pays the $35 and then these other things are all in addition. That's not always the case.
Okay. So that's a new challenge. So then Mr. Pitts, and then we'll go to Miss Montgomery, and then I think Mrs. Greenwald after that. So Mr. Pitts, with that being said, to make this equitable and fair for everyone, is there a way to do a credit-based program where you apply a $30 credit to every fee associated to a business instead of a $5 or $2 business registration fee? Is there any way to do a discounted rate for everyone? And that way you just do a credit-based system. So everyone has a $30 credit. If you're a farmer, carnival, boxing, wrestling, martial arts performer. I mean, how does that work to make it equitable if that's going to be a concern for the city attorney, if that makes sense?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I agree. I think that might be that sounds to me a better way, is just to credit everybody's account by $30 or $35. It might be a more fair-handed way of doing that, because yeah, I think that I don't see any reason why we can't do that. Again, the legal department will have to weigh in, but they had some good ideas on how we could do this. So without getting into the morbid details of how city finance works, I think that a credit would be a fair way of handling it.
Okay, and is there a fair and concise way to make sure that new business owners and new business registration individuals have access to that credit as well for that year, if we did it a year time?
As long as it's defined in a code or in a ordinance or resolution, and I think we could do a credit by resolution. I don't think we would need an ordinance, as long as it were done where it is easy to understand what it is we're applying it to. I can code that into the software to make sure that it applies that for that period of time.
Perfect. Okay. So that answers all my questions. Ms. Montgomery, go ahead.
Brooke Montgomery for the record. Thank you. Actually, those were quite a few of my questions as well. I wanted to bring up, I spoke with a lady from the Cooperative Catalyst of New Mexico. Her name is Sandra McCardle, and she helps different businesses come together to form cooperatives. Sometimes they're food cooperatives. I'm working alongside her because I work with Native American and on tribal lands, and we have like community gardens that we work with. When I was talking to her, it made me think of our board and maybe some potentials for cooperatives here, and they register as businesses, usually just LC. They can be S corps. Generally, they're not nonprofits actually, but there's different ways they can register a business. I just wanted to kind of put that out there. It could be something that we do moving forward. In terms of reopening the economy, if people are going to be home more and they register as a home business, but they come together as a cooperative, they could do things like virtual learning centers where they work together, kind of like the food co-ops, that we have, but with maybe children, education, and food security. Those are the main topics. Sometimes art in museums, farm cooperatives. So I thought that might be something that we could look at in terms of the fees. If we were to encourage removing some of the fees, more people could register a new business from home and maybe form businesses together in this fashion. And one more clarifying question. We're not talking about liquor licenses or anything like that, just the registration fees and those various specialty fees, right? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think that like liquor licenses and such like that is a regulatory license, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. And then like a business fee would be a registration fee or something like that. But with that $30 credit, if we did something like that, that could go to whatever it's on their account. They just deduct $30 from their check type thing. I think that's what it is. But I think like liquor license is a regulatory fee, which is different than a license fee. Ms. Greenwald, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had suggested last week that maybe a solution that is reasonable, hopefully maybe permissible, I don't know, and equitable would be to, instead of waiving fees, to set up some kind of small grant program where businesses in need could apply to have their fees covered by the city, like set $5,000, $10,000 aside for that program, kind of like a scholarship.
Thank you for your comment. I appreciate that. Mr. Harris.
Thanks. This is Michael Harris for the record. So I do like the idea of a credit. I think that sounds pretty simple and sounds like it addresses my concern over overhead, and everyone also shares that concern. I have one question, and then I also wanted to address, make a note about something Brooke said. I guess I am wary, and so I'd like to hear from staff, like, is there a concern that if we did suggest that this $30 credit is issued, does that take a meaningful chunk out of somebody's budget at the city and perhaps negatively impact either other programs that the city has running or staffing levels or something? So I think we should help people, but not at the expense of other things that might be more helpful. So that's a question, I think, for Dr. Pitts. And then just real quick, Brooke, you mentioned cooperatives, and the Economic Development Department is having a webinar or something on cooperatives next week. So that might be something we could pass out some more info about that. Anyway, I'll let Dr. Pitts answer my question. Thanks.
Mr. Pitts, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Harris. I don't have a particular concern about that fee. It's as long as City Council is fully aware of what they're doing, and that fee, the revenue from that fee goes to the general fund. It's City Council money, and it they choose to allocate it back to us or not back to us, depending on their desires. We are very well aware, and we have been spending a lot of time in the past couple of years trying to show the costs of doing business registration, building permitting, and so on, versus the cost versus the revenues, and making sure that we're doing that. But I think City Council would be well aware of that this is an incentive program and not a. They would know. So I don't feel like we're going to lose this. We're going to lose the revenue, and therefore we're not going to have enough money to do X, Y, Z. I think. In fact, I think it would be a good thing for City Council to have to grapple with the issue of how do we actually do meaningful help to businesses without just saying, well, we're just not going to charge a fee. I think it's a good challenge for them to discuss. Because that's what they're dealing with over the past 8 months anyway, is that issue, is how do we get money out of our accounts and get them to places where it helps people. And so I think this would fit right along in there. But no, none of the fees are going into a revenue account that is then used to spend on something else. Our budget is separated in that regard.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Pitts. And along with that too, and then we'll go to Mrs. Montgomery and then Mr. Cohen. Just kind of my personal take on this is, one, City Council is working on the budget for 2021. Having this in front of them, they will know that yes, there's going to be a reduction in revenue brought in by licensure fees of X amount of dollars, and they can work that into the budget since they're working on the budget right now. And then two, the city of Las Cruces got a lot of money in CARES Act fees, or in CARES Act monies, to go towards things like this. And if this is one incentive that helps small business, at-home business, nonprofit businesses, anything like that, then I think it's in our purview, as well as our kind of what we're here as a board to do, to make that good faith effort to show that we're doing something and that the city of Las Cruces is being small business friendly. So that's my personal view, is that I've been on this board, I've gotten a lot of phone calls, people saying, yeah, Las Cruces is really hard to do, to start your small business and stuff like that. So I think this is a great way to show that Las Cruces is being very small business friendly and very business forward. So that's my personal view. We're going to go ahead and go through the Ms. Montgomery and then Mr. Cohen. And then I am going to ask that we make a motion to bring this forth to the city council to get the ball moving, because we can put forth a million ideas. The city council in the end has the power to put them into action, to get legal's advice, to get city staff's advice, and to go forth. But we make the recommendation, and we can put in there 365 days, a $30 credit. We can put that in there, and they can take off whatever they want. They can send it back to us. They can do what they want, but us putting forth a million ideas is better than not putting forth any ideas right now. So Ms. Montgomery, go ahead. Mr. Cohen, we're going to go next after that, okay?
Thank you, Chris. Brooke Montgomery for the record. Actually, I wanted to bring up, when I was looking at the forms, late fees for business registration only. And so there's every year, if you don't do it in time. So I guess a 365 calendar year. Is there any way we could equitably remove the late fee if they don't pay it in time? Or I guess if we remove the fee, I don't know if anybody has any late fees, but I just wanted to bring that up. And then back to Michael Harris on the webinar, it'd be great to hear about that. When I talked to Sandra, we were talking about having maybe a virtual conference. So a lot of the information we were putting forth were for the Native American business owners that I work with, but we could maybe include Las Cruces, and we could discuss that further. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Mr. Cohen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got a couple of questions. One of them is Mr. Chair, you brought up the CARES Act funding, and in fact, so I wanted to ask staff if they know specifically, would some of the funding that the city received from CARES Act in fact help replace any revenue into the city coffers if we were to move this? And I realize the city can adjust their budget accordingly if not, but it'd be helpful to know if they can just utilize some of the CARES Act funding. And then my second question is, could some of the funding that we're talking about, if in fact it can be replaced, help to staff the building and zoning area? There seems to be a backlog of being able to get permits issued on projects. And so looking at the economy and then reading some information just the other day, seeing that while construction in Las Cruces is going well, it's one of the stronger sectors, it's still being slowed down because of the COVID. Some of that is supply availability, but also I know for a fact some of it is permits are taking twice as long to get issued. So is that a staff issue? And could there be additional staff added if that funding is available through the CARES Act?
Ms. Martinez, do you have your hand raised? If you can, I don't know if you can answer that or not.
Mr. Chair, I will answer the part of the CARES Act, and I will defer to Dr. Pitts for the second question. Grisela Martinez for the record. So the city, I believe I mentioned briefly the process that took place from the CARES Act specific to Las Cruces. From the federal government, the funds were made available in two ways. The first one was directly to municipalities that were 500,000 in population or larger. The funds went directly to those municipalities. For every other municipality smaller than that, what happened is the funds went to the state, in this instance to the Department of Finance and Administration for New Mexico for us. About a month ago, we received the notice that the application for the city to apply and any other municipality to apply for these funds was received. And so we went through basically a grant application with the state. Then after that, maybe 2 weeks after that, we received the notice that the city had been awarded 2 different batches of money. One that it's a reimbursement of COVID related expenses. Since the beginning of this situation, we have been tracking all expenses related to COVID, maybe PPE, salary expenses that were linked to providing services to this. Losses are not an eligible expense, so it's actual expenses incurred. So that's one of the funds received. The other pocket of money received is for the Small Business Continuity Grant. That is something that we're still working through to understand the process that we need to follow. We submitted an application and justified why we needed these funds. We received $5.4 million. And the form of that disbursement is going to be grants to businesses after they apply. However, we are uncertain of when that actual money is going to get to businesses because of the steps required by DFA. And so the city got reimbursement of expenses incurred and funding that will go to businesses in the form of grants. And the second question, I will defer to Dr. Pitts for his input.
Thank you, Dr. Martinez. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Regarding permits and the timing on it, there is some delay in permit issuance, and it is largely a staffing issue, but mostly because we have, I don't know why it is, but the staff that handles permits is also the staff that tends to have 5 to 10-year-old children, and they all are trying to take their kids to handle their kids' school, and so it's really been a challenge for us in trying to keep up with issuing permits. We are not very far behind, but we are definitely slower. And then in addition, over the past 8 months, we've seen about 20 to 25% rise in the number of permits being applied for. So construction during the pandemic has been very high. I attribute it to the lower interest rates. And with the lower interest rates, people are wanting to do projects and wanting to build houses and buy houses and so on. So there's a kind of a perfect storm in terms of whether using CARES Act money or money from somewhere else to increase staffing. We have our staff require a lot of training to be able to understand the codes that they're applying it. So we have just hired 2 new people, and it just, when we hire someone new, it actually lowers our productivity because we have to do a lot of training with those people. So for a period of time, we lower our productivity, and then after about a couple of months, then they start catching up and so on. But I think it would be a very difficult thing for us to add more staff at this point. I don't think we have the capacity to train them in a way that would actually help us. And what I really could use is to get my people back to work and not having to teach their children. That would be the thing that would have the most bang for the buck. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pitts. Okay, so Ms. Montgomery, you're going to help me out with this. I think there is two things that we can bring forward. I didn't even think of the late fees that can be assessed to these accounts. So what I would really like to see this board do and put it forth, and if it comes back to us with some questions or suggestions or some better ideas, so be it. It gives us something to do as a board. I would like to see 2 things happen today. I would like to see a motion made to give new and current business owners or new and current business licenses a $30 credit through the city of Las Cruces to go forth on licensure fees for their business registration, just a $30 credit straightforward. So on a $35 business registration fee, they are really only paying $5, which is a lot less. I think that is something that the city can put forward to show good faith effort. 2, Ms. Montgomery, your idea is great. I think we also, with the first one, I think we need to put a 1-year date on it, whether it's from November 1st to November 1st or December 1st to December 1st. I don't really mind. We can put forth a 1-year time frame, and the city council can decide those dates. I think that with the business late fees, I think a lot of businesses are struggling. I know credit card companies are giving you no late fees for 3 months or whatever it is. I think the city of Las Cruces should do the same on business registration fees. I think we should put a hold on all late fees assessed for 1 year. So that way we are not compounding hurt on any business, whether you're at home, a big business, little business, whatever it is. Because a lot of people are not getting funding or grants or anything like that. And the process is really hard. And a lot of people don't have time to apply for a grant. You know, applying for the PPP loan was a huge challenge. It was a lot of time. So I don't think we need to put that on any business owner, home person, daycare worker, anything like that. I don't think we need to do that. So I would like to see 2 motions made today that we bring this forth to a vote at the next meeting to bring it forth to City Council. 1, $35 credit, and 2, no late fees for a year for licensure fees. Thoughts? Ms. Montgomery, I told you you're helping me out with this. What are your thoughts?
It's Brooke Montgomery for record. I saw Michael Harris raise his hand right when I was going to speak, and I thought.
Oh, okay. I did not see that. I apologize.
I'll pass to Michael Harris, and then we can come back to me.
Okay, perfect. Mr. Harris.
Okay, Michael Harris for the record. I think those are great, and if you were making that motion, I would make it or second it, whichever you need.
I'm the chair. I need someone to make the motion.
Okay. Brooke Montgomery for the record. I'm going to set forth 2 motions to vote next board meeting. The first one is that we would credit business registration fees equitably across the board for $30 for 365 days, preferably maybe November 1st, 2020 to November 1st, 2021. And also if we can waive late fees for the calendar year as well.
Okay, so we have 2 motions on the board. 1, the $30 fee, the $30 credit, and 2, the no late fees for 365 days.
This is Michael Harris. I'll second both of those motions.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the board for $30 credit and no late fees for 1 year. Any discussion from the board members before we do a roll call vote on this? Ms. Martinez, yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chair, can we get further clarification on the not late fee? Is not late fee related to the business renewal, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking of the $10 late fee for business renewal. So if they do not renew in time, but yet renew with the $30 credit, that they would waive the $10 late fee.
Thank you.
Mr. Pitts, yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just to clarify for the record, we're talking about section 16172 of the municipal code that says late registration or renewal penalty. And it's the $10 fee there. That's just maybe we could put that into the motion or into the minutes so that we're clear of what exactly I think that's what you're talking about. So I'm just making that clear.
Yeah. Yeah, that is correct. Yeah. So what we will do is, so in the minutes, if we can just state that when we're referring to the late registration fee, we're referring to section 16-172 in the municipal code. With that also being said, when I do put forth the letter to the city manager to bring this forward to the city council, I will reference that that section in my memo. And that way there's no confusion whatsoever. And I will also, with that being said, I will also reference section 16. Where's it at? Section 16 dash 170, which are business fees that are related to a registration fee. So I will reference both of those sections when I put forth that memo. Is there any other comments, questions, concerns, or discussion about these motions that we have on the floor at the moment? As I'm seeing none, what I would really like is if we can do a roll call vote on the first motion, which is the $30 credit to all businesses for registration fees.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Ms. Debbie Moore? Absent. Mr. Michael Harris?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Ms. Brooke Montgomery was the one to move the motion, correct?
That is correct.
Second by Mr. Harris?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Mr. George Miller?
Yes.
Ms. Sharon Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Veronica Archuleta?
Yes.
Mr. Ron Fitzherbert,
Yes.
Mr. Doug Cohen,
Yes.
Ms. Susan Greenwald,
No.
Ms. Jolene Martinez, absent. Ms. Darlene Lopez,
Yes.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Motion passes for the first action item.
Motion passes. Cool. And now a roll call vote, please, on the waiving of the late fee for 365 days.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Ms. Debbie Moore, absent. Mr. Michael Harris,
No.
Mr. George Miller,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Ms. Brooke Montgomery,
Yes.
Ms. Veronica Archuleta,
Yes.
Mr. Ron Fitzherbert,
No.
Mr. Doug Cohen,
Yes.
Ms. Susan Greenwald,
No.
Ms. Jolene Martinez, absent. Ms. Darlene Lopez,
Yes.
we have, oh, Mr. Chair.
Enthusiastically, yes.
Mr. Chair, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 yeses. Motion passes.
Both of our motions pass, everyone. We will be putting this forward to a vote at the next meeting. Both items to be brought forth to the city council, and I am very, very excited. So with that being said, we are going to move on the agenda to City of Las Cruces public transportation fees. Ms. Thomas, I know that this was one of your discussions that you led, and I know that we are unable to get any city staff from transportation on today. So if someone can please make a motion, if you guys want to discuss this a little bit further, we can most definitely. But if not, if we can just make a motion to table this until the next meeting where they have confirmed that they'll be able to join us. Ms. Thomas.
Yes, I think that's a good idea to wait until the next meeting because I know that Michael Bartholomew couldn't come. He had another meeting, and I talked to David Armijo this morning. He couldn't come either, so they need more time, I think, to be prepared.
Okay, perfect. So we have a motion on the floor to table this until Thursday of next week. Ms. Martinez, yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chair, for clarification purposes, given the purpose of the recovery board for city specific, the staff invited to present on this topic is within city of Las Cruces. And so I just wanted to clarify that. And that would be for Roadrunner within quality of life in the transportation section.
Okay, perfect. And with that being said, I know in the past that we can always make a recommendation that we send a letter to the county giving a recommendation of what we're doing as a city as well. So we can definitely look at that. So I do have a motion. I just need a second to table this until next meeting.
George Miller for the record, second.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. So we do have a motion and a second to table the Las Cruces, City of Las Cruces public transportation fee until Thursday of next week. Can I get a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
I had something to say.
Oh, discussion. Yes, Ms. Sharon Thomas, go ahead.
Yeah. So the county's not responsible for the rural transportation. That's a 3-county entity, and it's its own governmental. It's put in place by state legislation, so it's its own governmental entity. So if you want them to come and talk to, it's fine, but it's not the county.
Okay, I understand. Thank you. I appreciate that clarification. With that being said, can we please, oh, Mr. Cohen.
Yes, I'd like maybe a clarification of what is exactly it is that we are going to talk about with the transportation. I thought we covered that several weeks ago. And so what is it that, what type of action would we be considering looking at the, looking at this information? What it, us gathering this information, what would we be able to do with that? Maybe some suggestions, yeah.
So the point of that discussion, and correct me, Ms. Thomas, if I'm wrong, will be to waive fees for an extended period of time, and to see what their, so we need them to present and tell us what their plan is as far as fees go, because they haven't really put a set date on when they will be reintroducing fees into their schedule plan. What we will be doing is taking that information and then making a recommendation to City Council of whether or not we believe it is an appropriate action item to waive those fees for an extended amount of time. Is that correct, Ms. Thomas? That's what we're kind of doing.
Yes, it is. The council doesn't really have that authority to tell the South Central Regional Transit District what to do, but we can suggest that it come to their board meeting. So.
Perfect. So it's just an actionable favor item, I guess. Any other further discussion on tabling this until next week? As I'm seeing none, can I just get a roll call vote on the table, please?
Yeah, yes, Mr. Chair. Ms. Debbie Moore. Absent. Mr. Michael Harris.
Yes.
Ms. Brooke Montgomery.
Yes.
Ms. Veronica Archuleta.
Yes.
Ms. Ron Fitzherbert. Mr. Ron Fitzherbert, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Mr. Doug Cohen.
No.
Ms. Susan Greenwald.
Yes.
Ms. Jolene. Absent. Ms. Darlene Lopez.
Yes.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Motion passes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you so much. So the motion does pass. We did table this and we will bring it up at the next meeting when we can talk to them more. With that being said, we are done with our discussion items for the day and we are on to future discussion topics. So we do have now 2 future discussion topics, one being the 2 motions and the vote on bringing it forth to the City Council for the fee schedule. The second, well, I guess the third. So we'll have a 1A and a 1B, and then our second will be the transportation fees in that presentation. Ms. Montgomery, you do have your hand raised. Go ahead, please.
Brooke Montgomery for the record. 3 topics got brought up today that I thought we could discuss further. One is the CARES grants and for how that goes to small business, maybe getting some more information when we're able to on how that works and if that can be some form of grant or scholarship, or and I guess that is what Ms. Martinez had said, but just learning a little bit more about it and seeing how we can help get that out there and dispersed maybe and make recommendations once we know more information. That'd be the first one. The second one was just if we can discuss the permits and construction again and get some more information. If we are having an increase in construction business, I definitely want to make sure that that's supported. And then the third one that was brought up was the cooperative catalyst. I'd like to discuss that again and see if it's something that would help the Las Cruces recover.
Okay, great ideas, and those were mentioned, so I'm glad that they're mentioned again. Ms. Martinez, you have your hand raised.
Mr. Chair, Gisela Martinez for the record. Actually, the acceptance of the grant by the city will be presented on Monday, September 21st, so this coming Monday. And there will be, it is for discussion. So it would be more appropriate if you're interested to join during that streaming, or we can send the link so you can get the full information on that. City Council is actually acting upon it on this. So given the mission of this board to provide recommendations to the council, that's already happening.
Okay, so that meeting will be presented Monday. So if you guys, all of you, ladies and gentlemen, have a chance to hop on that meeting to watch, that would be very beneficial. So Ms. Montgomery, with that being said, I think we should, that's going to be presented Monday. Thursday, we have the vote, and I think the following meeting, we should definitely look into that and have a huge discussion about it, because I know, I have looked at those grant processes and everything, and they are pretty complicated, and the forgiveness part has not exactly been the best and most transparent process, not with the city, but just in general. So I definitely think there needs to be a lot of clarification on that. So let's tune in on Monday and then go from there, I think is a good idea. And we can discuss that on Thursday in future discussion items. Ms. Martinez, Griselda, do you have another comment?
Yes,
Okay, go
Mr.
ahead.
Chair. I agree with your comment about the complexity of the process. We actually had a training yesterday with the Department of Finance, who is the fiscal agent, and actually the guidelines are going to be are being provided by them, and outside, a lot of that it's outside city's control because we are a grantee. So we'll that information will also be presented on Monday as well.
Okay, with that also being said, Griselda, while you're on, so is there, I mean, your department is going to be flooded with questions. Is there, how are you guys going to be able to handle that influx of calls? Because it's going to be very, very crazy and stressful. Is there anything that we can do as a board to kind of assist or make a recommendation for the economic development department to be able to handle that influx?
Mr. Chair, Griselda Martinez for the record. We're up until yesterday, we're still learning of the requirements to all municipalities by DFA. And we're figuring out the logistics. Part of the funds cover administrative costs. So there is already funding that we can channel that in that direction. And at this point, I don't believe that there is
Ms. Martinez, I think you froze.
as quick as possible by DFA.
Okay, I caught most of that, but Ms. Martinez, you did cut in and out. I don't know if it was just me or everyone noticed that.
My apology, Mr. Chair. My internet is joining the rest of the comments. If you could let me know where I stopped, where you cut off, so I can repeat it.
The last thing that I personally heard was you were talking about the requirements, and that you were learning more about the requirements, and then you just kind of cut out.
My apology. I'm going to stay off video. So we are aiming at fully sourcing to ensure that we process applications and answer questions as fast as possible within the constraints required from us by DFA. And I believe that's going to be the bigger delay, but we're still working to aim at streamlining it as much as possible.
Wonderful, thank you. With that being said, there's a lot of hands raised. I'm not 100% sure who did it first, as there's no countdown clock. We're gonna go, I have Mr. Harris is right here, so go ahead, Mr. Harris.
All right, thanks. This is Michael Harris for the record. The topic that I was wondering if we should bring up is probably the elephant in the room, which is the minimum wage and the suggestion at the last work session of changing it specifically for a short period of time for the purposes of relief to small businesses. And if it seems appropriate, maybe we as a board should provide a recommendation to the city on that. Obviously, that could turn into a really big discussion topic, but it might be something we could consider, and it would need to be something that we do relatively quickly. My understanding is they have a very short timeline to make a decision there.
Ms. Martinez, I know you have your hand raised to speak to that. And as far as that goes as well, I believe they're going to have a work session where they will be talking about that. So I don't know. We're definitely not going to beat that work session where they're going to be making a decision. So that, I think that's kind of already a done deal as far as it goes with the meeting on Monday. Ms. Martinez, go ahead though, if you have a further comment on that.
Yes, Mr. Chair, you are correct. City Council is already addressing that discussion item. On Tuesday, the 22nd of September, is going to be two sections of the work session, one covering employees and one covering employers. So if the board wants to provide input, I would encourage contacting City Council and Mayor with your opinion on that matter. City Council is already acting upon that based on the discussion from last Monday.
Okay, perfect. So with that being said, I think the best thing to do is if you have a personal recommendation that you put forward that to your city council member or all the city council members. We're just not going to make that cutoff time before they make a decision on Tuesday. Next up is going to be Ms. Sharon Thomas. Go ahead.
I just noticed a couple things in the minutes from the last meeting. One was that Debbie Moore asked if we could get more information on the anti-donation clause and how that affects the kinds of decisions we might be making on this board. So, and also there was some discussion about the enforcement of GRT, you know, who enforces that? How does that work? And those were both Debbie's things, I think. And then we talked a lot last time about the Biz Sprint program. And so I'd like to know more about that program, just in case there's something in that program that we could ask the city to do to help support that program. There might be some ideas there.
Okay, perfect. Ms. Montgomery, do you want to answer the Sprint portion of that question?
Definitely, Brooke Montgomery for the record. You know, I think we can bring forth rediscussing the Sprint, the Las Cruces City for Sprint. And now that we know after, or let's say after Monday, when we know information on the CARES Act and the small business grants, maybe we can include that as one of the training sessions within a sprint, within the accelerator. So we can support writing these grants and helping businesses get grants and scholarships. So I would definitely like to discuss that more. I can discuss it with my team and bring some more information if we have time next week or the week after.
Wonderful, thank you. I appreciate that. And I agree. I think we need to do something with the Sprint as well. Ms. Martinez, go ahead and take it away.
Mr. Chair, on the Biz Sprint, we are working with the project manager on this. And we are making sure that we're assessing the level of demand for the Biz Sprint. What we could do is right now the Biz Sprint application, it's open for the second cohort. We can email that to you all and request for you to help us distribute that The due date for the second cohort application is due on September 29th. So we have a week in which businesses can still apply for this to participate in this program. And we're I think a big part of the decision making will be the level of demand that we receive in this second cohort by businesses.
Yeah, I think what I'm interested in learning more about is what's in the BizSprint, the businesses that apply. So then what's in that program? What kind of information do they get, or how does it work?
Mr. Chair, Ms. Sherry Thomas, we are actually having a work session before. I do not recall the specific date, but within the next 4 weeks, and we're going to be presenting before council the programs that we have implemented this far to provide business support, and we're going to be talking about the preliminary results from BizSprint. And actually we launched a new program to help businesses be prepared for social media. We're going to be speaking to that as well before council. I can send a date on when that presentation will be for further details.
Good, thank you.
If I may, Brooke Montgomery for the record. I can actually talk to the project manager over the BizSprints, Dana, and see if she would like to present on the BizSprints and directly to the board. And I know there were some changes. Primarily, our BizSprints originally, they pivoted with COVID. Originally, there was customer discovery interviews and some business training on value proposition, but because of COVID, there were changes needed by the small business owners. So I know kind of on a general basis that we looked at the application pool, and based on the questions and the needs of the businesses, the presenters and speakers were aligned to coordinate with needs. So it can change with this next applicant, depending on the pool of applicants. So it's, if there's a need for example, what Griselda said, we added 3 weeks on for bringing your business online. It's something that we've seen in the city of Las Cruces, and I've seen across the state where businesses have been needing to learn how to, for example, set up payment transactions on their websites, or even make websites. So that was something that was added. When the businesses apply, if they have a specific need, we reach out to other professionals in the community to help speak to them. So if you would like, I can reach out to Dana as well, and I'm sure she would be fine presenting on the outcomes and speaking directly with the board to answer questions.
All right, with the comments and the discussion on the BizSprint, since Ms. Martinez did say that they are already kind of working on that, I think we should see where they go with that process, and then maybe circle back around with that. Because I remember when we originally talked about this, more of it was to do with funding than the program itself. So if we can like help with the funding, I think we can take that cue from city staff and then go from there. I just want to see what they come up with, since they're the ones dealing with that. Next, I'm going to have Miss Susan Greenwald and then Mr. Cohen.
Mr. Chair, Susan Greenwald for the record. Mr. Cowan was in front of me. He raised his hand before me.
Oh, okay, no worries. Mr. Cohen, go ahead. Cohen, sorry.
Thank you, Ms. Greenwald. I just wanted to maybe reiterate, it's been brought up already, but the idea with the construction and building permits, I think that would be very important to have on our discussion next week, because the reach that construction projects have into our economy is pretty vast. I mean, it begins to touch a lot of areas in our economy, everything on the retail, wholesale, labor. And so if there's something that we could do to help expedite the ability for these permits to get out in a timely fashion. I think that would help. For instance, I know specifically of a project somebody has applied for permitting. Normally it would take a week to two. It's they're being told 4 weeks. That's a significant delay. If we can help bring some ideas forward or some kind of a resolution to help mitigate that, that would be tremendous, I believe. And then my second one was in the minutes, and the reason why I had to abstain from approving the minutes earlier in the meeting was I had to step out during the conversation with the Las Cruces Public Schools last week. And in the minutes, it said that they were going to make a decision this last Tuesday with regards to going forward. Do we have an update on what they decided on Tuesday?
Yes, Las Cruces Public Schools will be doing fully virtual until next semester. So throughout the rest of the school year. Yeah, that was decided. So they are not going to be meeting in person until they will talk in January. So I think there's a lot of good possible discussion items. I think we're gonna have to do some research on the building permit one. Oh, Mrs. Greenwald, I apologize. I lowered your hand. Go ahead, ma'am.
I'm sorry, that seemed a little. So guys, I was researching this, and maybe those of you who work more closely with the social services and those kind of nonprofits in town can give me a better answer. But with all the things that are going on, especially like school not coming back in session for a semester, women primarily being primary caregivers of children and even the elderly, maybe their hours are being cut back, maybe and unemployment, I don't know, maybe they're filing for that. Is there a program in town where women who are not in shelters, who are not in homeless shelters or crisis shelters, can receive feminine hygiene products? I mean, I know that might, if they don't have those, that might be that might be a reason why they, or maybe not a reason they can't work, but a hardship in working in a hardship and affording those.
As far as that goes, I'll kind of answer that. So a couple resources for those individuals that need any kind of feminine hygiene products and or any kind of hygiene products,
Right.
have a couple resources. If they are of the college or high school age, a lot of public schools have pantries where they can go in and pick up those products. NMSU has the Aggie food cupboard, but they also have hygiene products when it comes to that, whether it's soaps, lotions, deodorant, things like that. So that's those younger individuals. And then I think La Pinon, La Casa also have those, and you do not need to be staying there and or going through treatment, but they do have those where you can go and pick those things up. So those are two resources. And then I believe the Las Cruces Gospel Rescue Mission does work with that as well. And I think Camp Hope also, which is a nonprofit. So most of those 4 nonprofits cater to those kind of issues, and they have those resources there. So I would, if you know of anyone looking for that, or if you're watching this, those are your 4 nonprofits and entities that you want to go and check out.
I mean, there may be some people who are finding themselves in that situation newly during this, maybe even a way to publicize the resources that are available.
Okay. Yeah, and that might actually be a good thing to add into the Las Cruces Safe website. Another part of those resources that we have access to as a community. So I think I'll email city staff and see if we can get those added onto the email or to the website as well. Those are good ideas. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
Of course. So with that being said, we've had a lot of good discussion. So we do have those 2. Oh, Miss Lopez, where are we at with the scholarship Is there any update that we need to be discussing, or are we still kind of going through that process?
Yes, we're still going through that process right now. I don't think we'll be ready for an update by next week. So we'll let the board know next week if we have more information to be able to present on.
Thank you so much. Okay, well, so that with that being said, there is a lot of good things that we needed to discuss. So we have the two that we're revisiting: transportation and the fees. The fees is going to be a vote. So a vote and then a discussion, or a discussion and then a vote. I apologize. And then we're going to have the transportation fees, which will be a discussion. Hopefully those are pretty quickly. I think that this board should. Okay, so CARES Act is being presented Monday. I don't know if we'll be ready to have that conversation on Thursday. Actually, I kind of do. So let's go ahead and put a review and it doesn't need to be a presentation. I hope that you all can tune into that meeting Monday. I will watch it as well. And I want to be able to have a discussion on future discussion items with the CARES Act and what the city is getting. I think that needs to be discussed, and I think that needs to be a focus, as that is money accessible to small business, and that will help out a whole lot. So I do want to talk about that. So that's, I think those are 3 discussion items. So with the permitting and the timeline, I think that's something that we need to look at on a personal note and maybe contact. Mr. Pitts isn't on here right now, so we can't exactly ask him what he needs, but if we can maybe email him, Mr. Cowan, if you want to email him and ask him if there's anything that we can do to assist with that, I think that's a really good thing. So I'm not going to put that on as a discussion item, but I think that should be a future discussion item if you can get some answers as what we can do to assist with that, because what it sounds like is staffing, and I don't think we can necessarily do anything with staffing. As far as this board goes, I mean, we can maybe make a recommendation to city council, but it sounds like a staffing issue. So if you want to email Mr. Pitts, I think that'd be really helpful. And then Ms. Montgomery and Mr. Harris, you both brought up a co-op or a cooperative for at-home business people. I don't know if there's any information out there, or if we just need to publicize the fact that it's a asset that we have to go forth. I don't know if there's any actionable item that we can do besides just bringing it to light and publicizing the fact that it's a thing. If either one of you can help me with that, Mr. Harris.
This is Michael Harris for the record. I'll send the info notice that I got to city staff, and they could distribute it through our normal list. That meeting is happening like right before ours next Thursday, so I don't know that we would really have any info to discuss next week.
Okay, so then that will be something that we talk about in the future discussion as well. So right now we have 3 discussion items. I'm going to limit it to those 3, and then we will bring up the future. Ms. Greenwald, I will email city staff on the hygiene products. Ms. Lopez, if you get any new information about that, I would like to hear from it. And then Ms. Thomas, I am also going to email city staff on the issue on monies with the city attorney, and see if we can get some guidance on that to help guide us in future decision making, since it sounds like that has been a huge thing and we have to ask a specific question to get a specific answer instead of a very broad what is acceptable. Ms. Martinez, go ahead.
Yeah, yes, Mr. Chair. Actually, on last Monday's work session, there was a full presentation by our attorney, by our legal team on anti-donation and ethics. I can send the link so the board can watch it. But the bottom line is the city cannot benefit a specific entity without having a return back to the city. But we can send that link to you all so you can watch that full session before council.
That would actually be perfect. If you could forward that out to the entire board, we can review that. And then under future discussion items, we can just go over briefly what looks like a acceptable and non-acceptable anti-donation issue. But I would love to see that video. Thank you. Okay, so we do have our future discussion items for next week. We do have future discussion items for after that. And it sounds like some of us have some work to do to come up with some good actionable items for the following meetings. So with that being said, is there any general announcements? Once again, Ms. Martinez, what time is the presentation tomorrow for CARES Act with the city?
Mr. Chair, I believe it's in the morning. I don't have the details. We can send an email with that information so that the board can tune in.
Perfect. Okay, so we are going to be getting an email on the link to the video about anti-donation, a time for the CARES Act meeting tomorrow so we can tune in. And then also, Griselda, in that email, if you'll also let us know the time for the Tuesday meeting where the special session where they're going to talk about employee wage and employer minimum wage, that would be helpful so we can tune into all those three and better acquaint ourselves with the issues. Any other future? Oh yes, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, just for clarification, the acceptance of the funding from CARES Act is going to be Monday, the 21st, but I will ensure to send that information to you all.
Okay, perfect. And then, but there is the special meeting on minimum wage on Tuesday, correct?
Correct. So Monday and Tuesday are items for discussion before council. Correct.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, so any other general announcements for anyone? Yes, Ms. Martinez.
Mr. Chair, in the email, I would also include the detailed information of the two programs for business support that businesses can access free of cost, the BizSprint being one, and the social media business assistance being the second one. The social media business assistance is going to be an on-rolling basis, and that is also free of cost to businesses, and they're specific for businesses within city limits.
Beautiful. Thank you. I appreciate that. That will give us a lot to do before the next meeting, and I appreciate that. With that being said, last call for general announcements. As I see none, I will entertain a motion in a second to adjourn the meeting. Unless you all want to stick around with me today. Yes, Ms. Montgomery.
Brooke Montgomery for the record. I motion to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Sharon
George
Thomas.
Miller, second.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second to adjourn the meeting. We are adjourned. Everyone, have a great day and tune in Monday, Tuesday, and do your homework. Thank you. Have a great night, afternoon, whatever it is.